All right, everybody. Thank you so much for attending today. My name is Andrew Duncan with Cloud Adoption Solutions, and welcome to our webinar on solving your biggest Salesforce challenges. And today we are working on the topic of adoption. Now, the secrets to Salesforce user adoption, it's a big title. I know you're all probably really anxious to find out what we have to say, so we'll get going here in a minute. Now, just to start, I came from the other side of the Salesforce user community. I was a user right out of college, someone who didn't really know what was going on. I was trained on how to enter leads and use Salesforce at a very basic level. But all I did was sit at that desk all day and wonder, how can I build reports? How can I, learn how to create dashboards? What am I even looking at? What is this information? Am I just entering leads into a Rolodex? And I'll tell you what, ever since Shannon became my mentor, my boss, my mind has been completely blown wide open through trainings, through webinars, through all the work that we do with our clients around the world. So it's a really exciting day to present some of those ideas to you guys. So without further ado, my boss, Shannon Gregg, president of Cloud Adoption Solutions, is here to teach us about adoption, user adoption, and drive us forward today. Thank you so much for joining us, Shannon.
Fabulous. Super excited to be here. And we're going to spend the next so many minutes together talking about the intersection of theory and practice.
Yeah.
So many people in the Salesforce ecosystem are just lifelong learners. So we don't have to talk about mindset. You already have it, or you wouldn't be here right now. So kudos and congratulations to you for making the commitment and the investment and learning more. So sales technology user adoption really happens, in my estimation, at the intersection of three theories. So we are looking at change management theory, adult learning theory, and the diffusion of innovations theory. I'm going to walk through those today, not theoretically based on all of the things that I've been reading for the past 3 years while I'm working on my PhD that is focused on Salesforce user adoption, but telling you instead the Cliff's Notes version. So you can say, hey, I get it. I can take this information and here's how I can immediately apply it to my user base. This can work for any piece of technology. It doesn't have to be Salesforce. It doesn't even have to be sales technology. However, there have been loads of studies done that show that the more people who are in sales can adapt to using their productive technology in a way that is both efficient and effective, the faster they'll turn around revenue. And a lot of businesses are very interested in increased revenue. So revenue allows companies to do a lot of things. One, be prepared when something unexpected like a pandemic happens and they need some cash reserves. Two, be prepared to serve much larger audiences than they did before based on the needs that are coming out of unexpected, unmet consequences at times. And so really, we're going to go through these theories today using our process that we call adopt. Now, we know already that you have probably downloaded our user guide that shows you those 5 stages. So you know that there's an A, D, O, P, and T. But what we're going to do today is take you through so that you can say, okay, I see these stages now. How can I apply them? Because I would love for my sales team, my service team, my marketing team, my executives to understand and use this a little bit better so that we can prove the business case, so that we can build the ROI, so that we can give people better lives. Because if you, like me, had to suddenly become a teacher also while schools were closed during the pandemic, and you, like me, had to log into 14 different systems with different names and passwords that were set by the school, and you had all these different things you had to do with no single sign-on, and you find that that technology started to get in your way, this is the kind of pain we're talking about. So we're going to lead you through these steps today so that you can see, here are ways that I can sort of take this through and understand and apply it so that my users not only don't feel frustrated, although that's a great place to start. You don't have to boil the ocean with user adoption. It's massive for a reason. But let's say after you've gotten past the part where they're no longer frustrated, but to the point where they're saying, hey, this is actually pretty cool. I can do this. I can help with this. I can get people to the point where they're saying, I see the true value. I love this. This is making my life so much better. So we're going to take you through those steps today, and I am excited to talk to you about them. So the first one is going to be articulate. I'm going to take you through the steps, explain to you what that is, and then how you can immediately apply it in your organization. One of the things I want to make sure that you know when you leave this call today is that even if you don't technically lead a team, and we see this a lot for people who are working specifically on the technology, if you are an administrator of the technology, a lot of times you don't lead the team of people that you're trying to influence to adopt your technology. So we're going to show you how to articulate that so that you can be the person who's leading them along the things that they need to do. The next thing that we're going to show you is how you can demonstrate the pieces of that technology. After that, we'll go through Orient. And for our friends that are in the UK, hey, you may say orientate, but we're saying the same thing. For P, we're looking at progress. Yes, you'll make progress, but you want to progress because we want to be active about this. This is something we have to actively do. And then finally, test. So we've got these lined up in a way that you can run this through very quickly so that if you're taking on something gigantic, let's say you're implementing a brand new CRM system or a brand new CPQ system, or if you're taking on something very small, such as you found a few pieces in the summer 20 release of Salesforce that you want to show people and you want them to take that on, you can walk through these 5 steps regardless of the size of the change that you're trying to influence. And it will be easy, and it will be something that you will know that you can do every single time that will help them to pick up the things that you want them to pick up. So let us start with articulate. So articulate lines up very nicely with the diffusion of innovations. And since we know everybody has our guidebook, you've seen the diffusion of innovations curve. It is the most beautiful, well-behaved bell curve that we've ever seen. It does exactly what we want it to. So we know that there are people who are early adopters, who are innovators, who just love new stuff. So they're going to try new things because it's something new. That's what they're into. They love it. These are the people that are like, it's new, it's unproven, I'm going to be the one that tries it. And then you've got people all the way down on the end who are laggards who say, you know what? I've been selling the same way for 40 years. You're not going to change the way that I do things because I'm retiring in 2 years. So what are you going to tell me that I can do differently now? So all of those people, all those categories of people can be sort of led through these 4 main elements that are in the diffusion of innovation. So you already understand the curve, what it means, and how you can diffuse or spread an innovation. So the first thing you want to consider is, what is the innovation? What is the innovation that we're trying to get out there and get people to really use and use the right way? So that's the first consideration in this theory. Now, as I told you before, what we're doing today is linking theory to practice. So we're taking this academic idea and applying it to practical applications for people that are actually using the technology. We're marrying those things together. So when you hear something like the innovation doesn't necessarily have to be a new piece of technology. It could be a new way to enter the building. It could be a way that you say, we're going to do something a little bit differently now. Now you have to use hand sanitizer every single time that you leave the grocery store. So an innovation is just something that's new that people haven't already been doing as a habit. So keep that in mind. A lot of times what we see when people are trying to articulate their innovation, it's so big and it's so broad that they're giving it something that's so huge that it's impossible to be able to even say, here's what the innovation is. So you want to be able to articulate the innovation. The next thing you have to do is really look at the communication channels that are available to you. Now, we all have one that's a favorite, right? Somehow, I made it to 44 and I just don't love phone calls, right? I don't love the phone. I love when people text me. I love when people Snapchat me, send me little video messages. That's my favorite communication channel. It's really easy for us to fall into what's our favorite, right? I might text Andrew all day long and say, hey, did you do this? Did you think about this? Is this happening? And Andrew's favorite communication channel may be GChat. Well, I'm here to tell you that you need to respect that, because if you're dealing with a really broad user base, the chances that every single one of them has the exact same favorite communication channel as you is probably 0, right? So I'm going to encourage you to look at all the different communication channels that are available to you and think about all the ones that your users use and try to get the message across to them everywhere. This is why you see a lot of different businesses have different social media channels, right? Some people love Instagram, some love Facebook. It's all over the place. You can actually query your users. You can ask them, what's your favorite communication channel? You've answered this question before. When you filled out a form and somebody said, do you prefer to be contacted by email or by phone? So you know yours, find out what everybody else's is. The next primary element in the diffusion of innovations approach is time. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can give something time, and time has to be bound. You know, time isn't one of those things where, you know, it's just infinite, right? If it were, we'd probably all find other things to do to shove into our time, right? So you want to be able to think about the time, and you have to bound the time for whatever the innovation is that you're trying to spread across. And then you want to consider the social system, because social systems and groupthink are very, very powerful, especially in organizations. People have a tendency to look at homogeneous thinking in organizations, and you are going to use that to your benefit whenever you're looking at articulating what the important thing is that you want to get across with your user adoption theory. So here's what I want you to do. We will send out the recording for you, but if you're one of those people that learns by taking pictures of things, go ahead and screenshot this, take a picture of this, because what I want you to do when you're thinking about the thing that you're trying to spread out there is filling in these 4 steps. How will I articulate the innovation so that I can gain the most user adoption? So in this case, let's say I'm working with an organization, they already have Salesforce Sales Cloud, they use it very well, they already have a marketing automation system, they're totally using all the things they need to in Salesforce Sales Cloud, and they have decided to move off of their ticketing system or their case management system onto Salesforce Service Cloud. So I've identified the innovation. Next, I want to think about what are my best communication channels, whether I've queried my users or I've just considered every single one of them. So I'm going to write down, I want to make sure I want to email them. I want to get an email from the executive who signed the purchase order. I want to make sure that they understand the messages behind all of this. Maybe you're using Salesforce Chatter. Maybe you're sending postcards to their home because you have a field-based group. Maybe you're putting signs around the office. Whatever it is, fill in this line and say, these are the communication channels that I'm going to use to spread this innovation. Next, you want to look at the time. So in this particular case, I'm saying, let's say we take 60 days. Now, we know that we need enough time to take our users through these 5 steps, which sometimes I call the 5 stages of diffusion of innovation grief, because a lot of times when you tell people things are going to change, they just resist it on principle, right? Humans don't like to change. We don't love it. We know how to do things. We know our favorite restaurants. We know the favorite things we eat there. We understand what our favorite pair of sweatpants are. We don't like to change those things when they work for us already. So you want to be able to give yourself enough time to take them through these 5 steps of giving them knowledge of the system, which you're using your communication channels for, persuading them, allowing them to make the decision to use it, implementing the change, and then allowing them to make that confirmation. Yes, this was the right thing to do. So give yourself a time, understand exactly what your time is going to be. And every time we work with a company, and we work with a lot of companies who are implementing new things in Salesforce, making changes to their process, everyone underestimates the amount of time it's going to take. Everyone. So whatever time you're going to put in front of there, think about your project management plan for your user adoption and consider whether you've given yourself enough time, because you probably haven't. It takes humans a lot of time to say, you know what? I can see where this will be better, and it may be abrasive or challenging at first, but I'll do it. And then finally, determine who the social system is. So in this particular case, if I were launching brand new Salesforce Service Cloud, I would say, okay, I'm going to start with my service team, right? There's a structured boundary. I'm able to control it because it's a group that I can look at and say, does this group have a way that they can think in a homogeneous way? Do they all have the same sort of outcomes? They have the same metrics, KPIs, expectations? Look at that sort of thing so that you can start to develop that opinion leadership. So as you move throughout the groups and your social system starts to get larger and larger, you move them from service to sales, and then to marketing, and then to operations, delivery, you'll be able to say, I understand what that social system is so that I can understand what my approach is as I'm articulating the need for user adoption. So those are your four main elements for A, which is articulate. So the next is demonstrate. And this one is my absolute favorite. I love this one so much. Everyone who has checked out the adoption guide understands that andragogy is how adults learn. That's opposed to pedagogy, which is the P for pediatrics. That's for children. Children learn much differently than adults. So you're here today because you wanted to be. Maybe in a few cases, your boss told you you should be, but I think most of you joined this webinar today because something about it tickled you. Something about it said, you know what? I think I can learn from this. This is something I'm struggling with. This is something I need to know more about. So you made the decision to take this course today. So when you're thinking about how the people that you want to teach are going to learn, keep that in mind. So they're self-directed and they're likely going to self-select. And that's why things like, if you've ever used lynda.com, which is now LinkedIn Learning, or if you've used Trailhead, people can go in and say, you know, this is the most interesting thing for me. I'm a salesperson, I'm an executive, I'm in finance. These are the things that really appeal to me. They make sense for my job. If I spend the time to do this, I'll get it back. It will be a good investment of my time. So keep in mind that adult learners are really self-directed and self-selected. So as you're starting to demonstrate how to do the things and why to do the things that will drive your user adoption rates, hopefully way up, remember that adults are going to self-direct and self-select. So there are three things that I want you to consider about the learning as you're demonstrating the system in so many different ways. And that is transformative learning, which is, while it sounds really amazing, I'm not talking about like a major transformation, like you just had a makeover and nobody in the audience can believe it's the same person. I'm talking about transforming the way you do something, right? So if you used to use Sugar CRM and now you're switching to Salesforce CRM, that's a transformation. If you used to use Outlook and now you're using Gmail, that's a transformation. So that's what I'm talking about. How can you help to demonstrate what they need to do to transform what they already know to help drive those user adoption rates up? Next is their experience in learning. So a lot of times I've observed with companies that we've worked with, there are people who are really, they would call themselves power users. They are like, hey, I already know how to do all of these things. Well, consider that sort of experience. If you've got somebody, the story that Andrew told at the beginning was really great, right? He came out of college, he sat down at his first sales job and they said, here's how you enter a lead. That's it and that's all. That was all he needed to know so that he could be really successful in his first job. So what type of experience they have? If you brought somebody who had been using Salesforce since the beginning, which has been around 20 years now, and you say to them, we're going to show you how to enter a lead, you're going to lose them right away from the beginning. They're going to sit there and do what, you know, probably 20% of the people on this call are doing right now, which is look on their phone and text and maybe order some things from Amazon, right? So you want to think about the level of experience that people are bringing, and it's okay for you to put them into cohorts where you say, I know these people have about the same experience, so that you can really tailor your demonstration to them. And then finally is really the motivation. You know, what's the motivation? What motivated you to be here today? So what is motivating people to learn more about the technology that you want them to adopt better? Now, there are a lot of applications out there that say, like, you know, we increase user adoption of Salesforce. So one of the things I'll tell you about user adoption is there is so much about it that is human-based. It's human-centered. You think about that golden triangle. I guarantee everybody on this call has heard of this before. People, process, and technology. The three all have to go the same. So you can't only have technology to drive more use of technology. You have to think about the people that are using it. And really what I want you to dig into here is what their motivation is. What motivates these people? Do they got to get their opportunities in because that's where their commission comes out of? Fine. Let's teach them everything about it with that lens. Are they service people who are given KPIs that say, this is how long a call should take, this is what percentage of your calls should go from tier 1 to tier 2? Fine. That's their motivation, right? That's cool. Let's get inside of that and use that so that we can really keep them motivated to learn more about how to use this technology that we want them to adopt. So in practice, that was a theory. Here's your practice. Another time for a screenshot or taking a picture with your mobile phone. after you've already bought whatever you bought on Amazon. Think about the main considerations here. One, if people can self-direct or self-select, where and how can they do that based on your company, the assets that you have, and where you can store things like collateral? What is the way that your company environment usually encourages learning? So do you have a learning management system where you can house pre-recorded, self-serve videos and documentation? Those are great. Keep them short. So somebody says right now, oops, I'm brand new, just got out of college. They showed me 13 times how to enter a lead, but I forget exactly what to do with this pick list. If they can go find a 3-minute value that says, here's how to choose the right pick list, they're going to watch that video and things are going to be great. So think about ways that they can self-direct their learning so that you can really appeal to that, so that you can demonstrate the system. Something like Trailhead that allows them to say, okay, these are the things that make the most sense for me. I'm going to go start with the ones that either solve a problem that I'm having right now, trying to save this opportunity, or help me learn something a little bit better so that I can get a little bit faster about the way that I'm working and therefore have more time to service my customers. Do you want to put them in groups where they can self-select? Hey, here's 3 different time slots that I have, or here's 3 different approaches that I have for the same exact sort of outcome or topic, and I'll then pick the one that they like the best. I've seen instances where we've offered the same exact training, but at different times, so that you can appeal to the people who think really well in the morning or who are in Europe, and really late in the evening for the people who are night owls, or maybe are on Pacific time zone. So think about ways that you can sort of stagger that so they can choose the one that works best for them. And then consider the people who maybe get very anxious in groups and do best with one-on-one learning. They'll tell you, or you can give them the opportunity to do it. Hey, if you've got a scheduling tool and they can go in and they can say, all right, I want to pick this one time. It's just going to be me and you. It's only going to be 15 minutes as opposed to the hour the group gets, because we can get down and dirty really quickly. So think about that and give them that permission to just to select it themselves. The next thing is really approaching that transformative learning. And so you want to think about the sites where that can happen. So, when I think about this one, I really can't stop singing Hamilton. If you've never listened to Hamilton, the room where it happened is what I think about when I think about transformative learning. So what's the site? Is it individual? Is it Zoom like this? Do you have a physical classroom? Is it something that takes place, online, pre-recorded, or live? Does it happen in a workplace? Does it happen out in the community? So where can you help them learn to shift from one way of doing things to the next way of doing things? Next, consider their experience. So think about the things that they bring and write those down as you're trying to think of your plan to demonstrate the new technology. So they're bringing concrete experience. What is it? They've come straight from college, so they know how to do a project, but they're not bringing any experience on CRM. Okay. A lot of people use reflective observation as a way that they experience learning. So they'll hear what you're saying, which is kind of what we'll do today. You'll walk away from it, you'll reflect on it, you'll look at these screenshots that you took, and you'll say, I know exactly how to put that into play in my organization now that I've thought about it. Active experimentation is a great way of learning for kinesthetic learners, people who like to do things hands-on. So these are the ones that you say, all right, I'm going to let you in the sandbox. Go create 7 test opportunities and do these things and see what happens. And so those are the types of people that they really have hands-on experience, and that's how they learn. And then abstract conceptualization. So those are the people that do what I did, which is read all these books and say, okay, I understand it in the abstract. I totally understand what the academic theory is. And then they'll put that into practice. So think about those things and write down how you're going to approach those for the people on your team. And then finally, it's the motivation to learn. What are they learning for? Are they learning because they're goal-oriented? Andrew told me yesterday when he was on Trailhead DX that there was a guy who has 444 badges. This is somebody who's goal-oriented. So, probably about 5 years ago, gamification was the big buzz in sales technology. Everybody's like, oh, got to gamify everything. These millennials, they love to get points and badges. And, some of Andrew's shrugging because he's like, yeah, you're right. Some of the people who were like in the boomer and Gen X category, like badges, we don't need no stinking badges. So think about your learners and how they're motivated. They're not all motivated the same. Some are activity oriented. They just like to try something new. Some are just learning oriented, right? Some people just like to keep learning because they have that growth mindset and they're like, hey, as long as I keep my brain active and I keep moving, I'll stay relevant. So think about those things as you're looking at how to demonstrate. All right, so Orient, or for Caroline from the UK, it's orientate. The primary stages here, and this is really focused on change management theory. So change management is a constant when you're looking at user adoption. The two just do not live in separate worlds. They just don't. So if you think there's user adoption without change management, it just is not a thing. So the primary stages that you'll use to help orient your users to the system are leading and managing the users, whether you're actually their manager or not. The next is business process re-engineering. So remember before we talked about that golden triangle, people, process, and technology. So you can't make your technology match not a good process, and you can't make your people use technology that doesn't follow the process you already use. So consider if you need to do any re-engineering of your business process. Sharing the implementation strategy is something that is so good to orient your users to the system. So we're going to talk a little bit about how you can do that and why you should do that, and why you shouldn't adopt this sort of attitude of like, you know, I'll tell you what you need to know, because a lot of times when you share the implementation strategy, it helps people get oriented to the system. And then finally, training and development, including intervention. So a lot of the companies that we work with on optimizing their Salesforce instance, they've thought about their training plan and they've maybe thought about their development plan, but a lot of people don't think about interventions because it's uncomfortable. Nobody wants to think about what to do if their sales or service or marketing or finance or procurement team does not do well with what they've been oriented to. So one of the things I really want you to take away from this is how can you include interventions? So here we go. This is your action learning slide. So if you are looking to make a checklist out of this, this is the slide to take a picture of. So leading, managing the users really starts with a top. There's a story that I love to tell. If any of you are not newbies to one of our webinars, you will know that I love to talk about Michael Dell, because Michael Dell is the #1 Salesforce user at Dell. And so that has an amazing ripple effect on the rest of the organization. Now, many of you will say, well, my executive will never use Salesforce. We will definitely send you other webinars that we've done on that particular thing. But the key here is like, how can you get your users, your stubborn users who are like, no, I don't want to do it, to be interested, to find the piece that they need? That's this step right here. That's Orient. So you want to look for ways that you can lead and manage them through the system so that they can say, aha, that's something I definitely want to use, can't live without it, well worth the money, I'll sign the check. And that will help you lead into your quick wins. So you always want to look for the quick wins and you want to communicate them. Let people know this thing that feels painful, that feels challenging, it's working. Keep orienting them to the system in team meetings and one-on-ones. So if you run a pipeline review meeting every Monday and you're preparing slides, stop. Now is the time to stop doing that. Don't do that anymore. Use the system. Use the system in action. It's always challenging to use a live cloud-based system because you're afraid of Murphy's Law, but that's okay, because you know what? Most of the time it's going to work. Use it in your one-on-ones. Have your people present their pipeline to you or their service KPIs to you using the system. Say, great, let's open up a list view. Let's open up that report. Show me exactly what you've been doing. Show me where the things are. Let's see it together. So you're going to keep leading and managing them through the orientation of the system so that you can see how they use it and they can see how you use it. Consider that business process re-engineering strategy like I talked about. So do you need to develop any new standard operating procedures or work instructions? Is there anything that you need to do to say, here's where we capture process? This is how we capture process in our organization. I will tell you that many organizations are very, very fluid with their business process. Everyone sort of knows how we do it. We show people when they start new. We don't capture it very well. That's okay. This is one of those places where I will tell you progress should not be the enemy of perfection. I don't care if you write it down like E. E. Cummings with no commas, no periods, and you don't even stop to think about your next sentence. Just go ahead and write it down so that you can capture what the process is, so that as you improve it, you can also capture those improvements. And then if you are an organization that is into lean, value stream mapping is something that you can definitely do to look at your business process to say, is there waste in the system? Are there places we can add automation? This is one of those places where you can rely on a consultant or partner as well to come in and say, hey, look, so many people in your industry, this is what they're doing instead to save time, save money, save, bureaucratic challenges. Sharing the implementation strategy, this one's so important and everyone skips it. So give them the why before the how. If you've got a brand new instance of Salesforce Service Cloud that you're trying to roll out, which we see very often, let them know why. Hey, we think there's really great value in having a 360-degree view of the customer in one place. We think we can get a better price if we have all of our particular technologies for servicing the customer on one contract. We think that we're going to be able to carry information from sales to service if we have just one system for that. So let them know why. This is what we went through. We formed a committee to look at the considerations and say, what are the 3 vendors that we're going to consider for our case management or our ticketing system? These are the things we scored them on. We scored them on price, reliability, length of time, integration capacity. Let them know what you went through. Because if somebody just comes in and says, hey, Nick, you're going to have a new dad now, and they weren't introduced to this concept, they didn't know their old dad was on the way out, and they haven't gone a few, like family meetings with the guy that's coming in, that's going to be a shock to the system, right? So let them know why and what you went through, because that will help them to feel more oriented to the system and accept the change a little bit better. And then when you're looking at training and development, which cannot be underscored enough, I tried putting training in like bold and like 75 point and everything, because so many people say, you know what, we'll do the training ourselves, or they'll get trained on the job, or they'll figure out the pieces that they need. Do not skimp on training whenever you're looking for user adoption, because when we do root cause analysis on companies who made a large technology investment that did not get it adopted, it always comes down to training. It literally always comes down to training. So think about, can you do peer-led training? Can somebody who's in the same position say, hey, Andrew, you're brand new here. This is what we do. This is how we enter leads. That's great. That'll come across really great. How do you do new hire training? How do you continue that education? How do you keep developing them? If you're here to hear specifically about Salesforce adoption, 3 times a year, they drop a little present right down for you, don't they? They say, here's our new release. They have spring, summer, and winter 3 times a year. They're like, ta-da, look what you're paying for. We're giving you something brand new and it's super cool and you probably are really gonna love it. So after you read through those release notes, which are like basically reading all the books I had to read for this PhD dissertation on Salesforce, after you get through it, you now have to lead people to that and train them on what is new, develop their idea of it, reorient them to the system so it never, ever, ever stops. And I told you, I don't want you to forget about interventions. You've got to think about what to do for those people that just aren't getting there. So, maybe you've got somebody who's not in the office, they're out in the field, they can't sit down with you, they don't understand how to use it, but you know what they do really well? They handle their mobile phone very well. You know them, you've known them for a while. They used to use a BlackBerry, now they use an iPhone. So they're capable of change, right? So think about what your intervention is. And of course, we invest a lot in our employees. It takes a lot to find somebody, it takes a lot to train them. It's much better to refocus an intervention on an employee that is salvageable than try to find somebody brand new. So consider what your orientation interventions are. So do they get additional training? Do they have to come one-on-one? Do they have to share the screen and show you what they know about the system? So be thinking about that. Don't only think about training and development, but also how do you interrupt somebody that isn't doing things exactly the right way? So now, progress. I told you there's progress and we want you to make progress, but we want you to progress, keep it moving forward, keep it moving forward. So your change management has to be progressive. It does not stop. Change management isn't something that happens once, like a tattoo. You don't get it and then you're like, cool, I have this forever. That just is not the way change management works. It's continuous, it's iterative, it has to keep happening. And specifically, if you're talking about Salesforce, they're forcing it on you, friends. 3 times a year, they're just dropping it on you. So you better keep it up. So you have to think about how you're going to review and keep the change on track for your entire team, for your users, the people that you want to adopt the things. And then you want to think about how to make that change stick. People who are in technology talk a lot about making it sticky. How do we make our technology sticky? How do we make it so our users never want to leave us? And I know a lot of you on this call today are in technology companies, and I guarantee that's something that your marketing team is thinking about all of the time. How do we make it so people are so sticky with our technology? And this is what they're talking about. Like, how do we make it stick? How do we make it so that people literally cannot wake up in the morning and not check their iPhone, right? Want to talk about a sticky innovation? Woo! So how can you make that change stick? How can you make it so that your users will say, I literally cannot live my life without Salesforce? If I see a job description and it does not say Salesforce, or somebody doesn't say they use Salesforce, I'm not even applying for that job because I don't know how to do my job without Salesforce. That's how sticky you want to make that change. And then how do you spread the change? So how do you make sure that that change gets out to everybody that needs to get to, and it's something that starts to take on a life of its own? You know, we talk about internal champions or cheerleaders or people who are really the ones who are going to take this new innovation and spread it around. In the Diffusion of Innovations, they call them change agents, right? So that's exactly what it is. How do you keep, you know, making sure that they are progressing and spreading that change, and you'll be able to be, you know, n to the 17th power as you start to get other people to help you spread that change as well. So here are the things that you can do to take this theory and put it into application. One, when you're reviewing and keeping the change on track, you want to look at where that constant iterative change is and how you're going to communicate it. So you don't just say, hey, everyone, we launched Service Cloud. Have a great time. So cool. You guys are customer service agents. You know, maybe I'll see you at the employee Christmas party. No, you have to keep that change on track. So you have to make sure that you're constantly letting them know, here's what's new. Here's a new way to use it. Hey, you know, Dale, who sits in cubicle 7, he figured out that way down here in the bottom left hand, we've got some quick actions. Let's look at that. So think about ways that you can keep that change on track so that people can be continually excited about the system, so that your adoption will continue to stay where it is and even grow. Making that change sticky is how you build the habit. So we talk about this one a lot, but on January 1st, everybody says, I'm going to work out this year. I'm going to the gym. You know, Planet Fitness, that is their favorite month because everybody signs up. Everybody comes, and then in February, you can get any treadmill you want because everybody's done with it because that change didn't stick, right? January is a horrible time to start going to the gym. You ate so many Christmas cookies. You're sad that all of the holidays are over. You know, your friends and family, you don't have anything else to plan for. That's a really hard time to make a change. So think about how you can build that habit and really build that muscle so that people can say, yeah, you know what? This does feel good. I love Salesforce. Wow, I can actually sling 17 opportunities at once, or I can make sure I'm tracking down 20 cases a day, where before when I had to write it down on a piece of paper and run it down, as one of our clients calls the sneaker net, run it down to the warehouse and say, somebody's missing this piece. How can you help? How do you build that habit? And then spread the change by celebrating the wins and let other people tell the story for you. So you get on that pipeline call and you let Andrew say, hey guys, I figured out something new and I was able to enter 20 more leads last week than I did the prior 6 weeks. That is going to perk anybody's ears up, right? So when you can celebrate those wins and have the people who did the winning tell everybody about the winning, that is even better for you. We're on our last letter in the adopt theory, and that is test. You have some primary strategies that you can test the change and test that stickiness. You know, remember those hands you used to throw at the wall when you were a kid, and they had some sticky substance. I don't even know what it was. It probably peeled the paint off, and they would sort of make their way down the wall, and some were really sticky and they would stay forever, and some would just fall as soon as you threw it. You want to be that hand that sticks, right? So how can we test the change and make sure that it's working? Well, first is user acceptance testing. So I don't just mean user acceptance testing of the thing that you've done in the sandbox before you push it into production. I mean, are all the people in your service team able to understand how and why they're going to be using Service Cloud? Go test the way they're doing things. And how do you do that? Our good friend Mike Gerholt from Salesforce, he calls it SABWA, Salesforce Administration by Walking Around. But now that so many people are still sitting at home and not going into offices, you can also call it SABZA, Salesforce Administration by Zooming Around. So literally say, show me how you do the thing. Hey, open up your screen, Andrew, and show me how you enter a lead. And if he shows me, the first thing he does is put the email address in so that Salesforce can check for a duplicate instead of him typing the first name, the last name, the company name. And then after he's typed 7 things, he's found that Salesforce has detected a duplicate. Once he shows you that, you're like, ah, this is so great. The way that Andrew's using it, now that I've tested the way that he does it, I can share that with other people too. And in fact, it may inform the way that I have my page layout on my lead record. Maybe I put email all the way up at the top, which I can tell from Andrew's face is a great idea. He wants me to do that right now. So think about how you can do Salesforce administration by zooming around. Have people show you the way they're doing things. There's no better way to test them than to say, show me exactly how you do it. You might have a strategy that's better than somebody else. Or you may find that they have a deficit and you have to apply an intervention, and that is okay. And then the last thing you really need to think about is your cultural change. So how much change can your company handle? Earlier in one of the slides, I told you to think about maybe 60 days, and that probably sounded like a lot. That's 2/3 of a quarter, right? We only have 4 of those in a year. But your company may be one that changes constantly, changes on a dime, changes welcome, changes something that you just do. Or you may work in one that says, okay, yep, we've been thinking about painting the front door black, but we have to get 3 different bids, and we have to look at all of the particles in the paint, and we have to send it off for pressure testing, and then we have to have 16 people sign off on it. And then we have to train everybody who's going to pay, think about it that way, right? What's the bureaucracy? What's the level of change? What's your environment in your company so that you can really test whether or not that is acceptable? So those are the strategies for you to test the change. I am going to open up the line now because I think we've got some questions that have been coming in.
Yeah, I don't see any right now. Everyone, if you would like to take this opportunity to type in some questions, first and foremost, thank you for coming on board. And if you had anything that stuck out to you or you wanted to ask, please do so now. We'll wait a couple seconds and see if anybody puts anything in.
I see Caroline was very happy that I said orientate. So I do have a question about how you can take this sort of information and start applying it if you've already put something out there, which is a really great question. So there's no time like the present. One of the things that I know is when I learned how to drive a car, I was doing a few things wrong, right? You didn't know that. You're nervous, you're scared, you start driving it, and maybe you don't realize exactly where your seat should be, where your rear view mirror should be. And that's okay. There's always time for adjustment. So I would tell you, take these different theories, these different steps in the adopt theory, and just start to apply them now. Just apply them now. It's not like you have to say, hey, you know what? I can't do this. I just can't do this anymore. We've already rolled it out and it didn't work. So sorry about that. No, it's okay to say, you know what? We've seen since we've rolled this out, a few people have had some challenges with the way that we save opportunities. Let's do it. Let's roll it out this way now.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you so much. And Jessica says, will you be sending out a recording? Yes, absolutely. We will be sending out a recording. You will get one. So Caroline says, how do you manage up leadership adoption or sponsorship has been my biggest challenge?
Yeah, Caroline, the first thing I will tell you, as sometimes what we do with our customers is just be Salesforce therapists. So I will tell you that is a problem at almost every company we work with. It really is. And I think a lot of it is because they're not in there entering every day. They don't have that sort of familiarity with the system. But I think one of the things that I would propose you do, Caroline, is talk to the people who are above you and start with 1 or 2 that you feel would be really comfortable with this sort of approach and say, hey, What is it that you'd love to see Salesforce do for you? Do you have to make reports for the board? Does the board ask for these reports once a month, and you have to make these slides that show the board our customer acquisition cost, our customer lifetime value, and our total available market? Do you have to do that? And they probably say, yes, it takes 6 hours to work on that every month. It's really a pain in the patoot. And so you say, you know what? I can have Salesforce do that for you. Salesforce can collect that data, or we can start collecting that data, or I can format it the way that you want to see it using Salesforce. And so I think a lot of times you can just start to be that person who says, I can help you see the art of the possible with Salesforce. And so if you're an executive who's like, yeah, I don't need to know about Salesforce because it is just a place where you enter in your leads and track all of your customer relationship, and you say, guess what, dear executive? I think Salesforce can do more things for you than you can think. And so why don't you tell me some of your current pains, and I'll think of some ways that we can solve those with Salesforce. And I think that's a really good way, not only to solve an immediate need and get them a little bit more attracted to it, but also to develop trust. I think that's a good way to do it. I think another way that I like to get executives interested in it is to teach them about Salesforce Mobile. So you can have Salesforce right on your phone. And what do executives worry about? I mean, they're worried about business results, right? They want to know, like, are we hitting our sales goals? Can I keep my job? What's the board going to yell at me about? And they wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and that's like an old line in sales. What keeps you up at night? But I know what keeps them up at night. They're worried about business performance. So if you show them, here's exactly how you can get Salesforce on your phone. This is the one dashboard you can go to. When you wake up at 3 o'clock, you can look at it and say, you know what? All's good, going back to Sleepyland, or I better get up right now because our building is on fire.
Yeah, that's absolutely true. And, Shannon, for me, I think I have a question about something that people often approach us for. And you talked about champions earlier and selecting a champion in the office. What do you think are some of the qualities that a Salesforce champion within the office would have if someone's looking to lead adoption through having a person who kind of supports it within a team?
Yeah, so that's a good question, Andrew, and I think it's one that's worth consideration for, everybody on this call, which is, who are your champions? Now, you already know who your power users are, right? There's loads of really cool free dashboards you can get from Salesforce that will
Right.
show you true logins, who's using it the most, the people who are coming to you saying, like, did you know Salesforce could do the thing? You know who those are. But one of the things that I love the best as a way to help encourage user adoption is to find a champion not only across departments. So don't just look for champions in the sales team or marketing team because they know it really well, but look for champions across your different departments. So find somebody in finance, find somebody on the executive team who can use it and start to spread the word and say, sure, yep, we spend a lot on Salesforce. We spend a lot of time thinking about Salesforce, but this is why it's really helpful to project managers, to people who are doing financial performance and analysis reports. And so then that way, you're really kind of spreading it in a way that goes beyond that social structure that I initially talked about. And then the other thing I love to do, and I think this is up to how much challenge people like, but I love to try to turn those laggards or the late adopters into champions. So I like to ask them, why do you hate Salesforce? And just wait, and they'll tell you. And when they give you those sort of objections, you're able to say, okay, so if we could solve those 3 things plus give you this, would it help you to see where Salesforce would be really appropriate? And those people who have the most dramatic swings can become your biggest champions.
Absolutely, that sounds great. We have another comment, and they say, it's from Joe. It says, could you talk a little more about training? Motivation goes beyond how, it goes deeply into why and who benefits. What type of training gets past technical competence?
Joe is one of my favorite people on the planet. So, hey, Joe, I'm so happy you're here with us today. And you're absolutely right. I mean, motivation does go beyond how, and it is deeply into why. And so when we're thinking about this sort of motivation and then how to train to that, I think a lot of times I start with that social structure and think about the role. So if you're a salesperson and okay, well, I've got, 60 leads and I've got 20 contacts and I've got 5 opportunities. I've got a pipeline that sort of looks like this. And I know if I have a 30% close rate, then I'm going to close 2 of those. And this is about what my commission's going to be. Well, they're highly motivated to be able to take those prospects, turn them into more highly qualified, more rapidly qualified, and a better win rate. And so I think one of the things that I love to do in training is to say, okay, what if you could turn one knob, right? What if you could turn one knob and you could get more leads, or you could have a higher win rate? And we could use the data from Salesforce to show you how to do that. You'll know pretty quickly why focusing on the manufacturing vertical is not going to be as lucrative to you as focusing on the healthcare vertical. So when you've got a healthcare lead, that's one that you should treat with immediate rapid respect really fast, and they should outperform the rest of the queue. And so I think when we're talking about technical competence, and you're right, Joe, a lot of people will be able to say, I get it. I go in, I enter my lead. This is exactly how I do it. I press save. And go beyond that into excitement. It does start all the way back at training, but it continues with that iteration and finding ways to say, here's why you're going to care about this. It just is that very simple, what's in it for me thing. What's in it for me? What's in it for me? If I'm in finance, what's in it for me? If I'm in marketing, what's in it for me? And it will be different, per department, per person. We're generalizing to make this easier to think about, but that's such a brilliant question.
Yeah, thank you so much. Right now, it doesn't look like we have any more. If anybody has a last minute question, please put it in now. Otherwise, we'll wrap up.
That's great. I want to thank everybody for joining today. We are just, I think you can tell like our passion for this really comes through, because we have seen companies absolutely transform not only what they're doing, not only how they're doing it, but also helping them to really connect with the why. We've seen that come through not only really good user adoption of Salesforce, but a solid look at the entire approach of what the company is doing. And so, we're really excited that there are so many people who are interested in this sort of topic. And, I think it goes without saying that if you can help somebody's life be easier through technology, why wouldn't you? So,
Absolutely.
yeah. So thank you so much to everybody who's joined today. Thank you, Andrew, for moderating and proctoring this.
No problem whatsoever. Thank you guys so much for showing up. And as always, Cloud Adoption Solutions, we are a 100% woman-owned Salesforce partner. We work on adoption, integration, implementation, administration, you name it, we have done it before. So if you have any other Salesforce questions, please, direct them to me. You will receive an email from us after this, so please feel free to email us back and ask questions. But we're just really thrilled that you guys are joining today. We do have another webinar coming up very soon. The topic will be released and the dates will be released very quickly. So keep your, your eyes open and your LinkedIn logged in so that you can see what we're doing. But, keep an eye out, and we'll talk to you guys very soon. But thank you all so much for joining, and thank you, Shannon, for leading us.
Thank you. Have a good weekend, everyone.
Everybody.